All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're really going deep, like way back in time, to explore a text that's been around for millennia.
Oh, I love it when we do these.
Me too. Me
Hmm.
too. It's the Bhagavad Gita. And specifically, we're going to be looking at the translation and commentary by Swami Nikhilananda.
A classic.
Yeah, classic. And it's amazing how these ancient Sanskrit teachings, they still have so much to say to us today. I mean, they grapple with some really, fundamental human challenges that, we're all still dealing with.
Absolutely. Yeah, the excerpts he sent over, they really get to the core of things, like who
Mm.
are we? What are we doing here? How do we find that sense of peace?
Exactly. And that's kind of our mission for this deep dive,
Yeah.
how can we take these ancient teachings and actually, pull out some tools, some real practical tools that people listening can use to navigate those tough inner battles we all face.
I like that.
Yeah. I mean, like self-doubt, anxiety, fear. These are big ones for a lot of us, right?
Yeah. Huge.
Yep.
Yeah, and they seem so prevalent today, more so than ever.
So true. So true. Okay, so where do we even begin with all of this? Where do we even start unpacking the Gita?
Hmm. Well, I think a good place to start, especially when we're talking about, self-doubt and anxiety, is the Gita's take on their true nature.
Okay. Yeah.
There are these verses, 12, 13, 20, and 21, that talk about this idea of the Atman.
Atman.
Yeah, which is like our soul, our true unchanging self. And what's really interesting is how this understanding of Atman can really cut through grief, which is something that Swami Nikhilananda talks about on page 72.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So, how does that work?
Well, Arjuna is in the midst of all this conflict, right? And he's overwhelmed with grief.
Yeah.
But the Gita says his grief is coming from a misunderstanding. He's not seeing the difference between his physical body, which is temporary, and his soul, which is eternal.
It's like being upset over a broken toy car when the child who was playing with it is still, perfectly fine and can just find something else to play with.
Perfect analogy.
That's what it is.
That's it. The Gita is saying that when we really understand that our true self, this Atman, is indestructible, eternal, well, then the ups and downs of life, the changes, even death, don't have that same power over us.
Because we're not, fundamentally tied to those things, those temporary things.
Exactly. Think about how much of our anxiety comes from, I don't know, our appearance, what we own, what other people think about us.
Oh, yeah.
All these fleeting things.
Fleeting, for sure.
If your true identity isn't rooted in them, they lose their power to cause anxiety.
Right, right.
And the Gita even uses this image of the self passing through different stages of life, childhood, youth, old age, and then moving on. It's like changing clothes, but the essence of who we are stays the same. So it's like a continuous stream like we've talked about before. And those setbacks and anxieties, those are just little eddies in the current. They don't define the whole river.
I love that. That's a really, really helpful way to think about it. So we've got this understanding of our eternal self, right? But then there's the question of how do we actually live our lives
Yes.
day to day? And this is where the Gita talks a lot about dharma.
Yes, Dharma.
Yeah.
On page 12, Sri Krishna introduces this idea of svadharma, which is like your own personal duty, your inherent nature. It's not just about following rules, it's about understanding who you are at your core.
So it's not about trying to fit into some kind of pre-made mold.
No, not at all. The Gita actually says that doing actions that align with your own dharma, even if you don't do them perfectly, is better than trying to perfectly follow someone else's dharma. Because when you act in accordance with your svabhava, your own character, it creates this sense of alignment and purpose. It feels right deep down.
That makes me think about self-doubt. I mean, so many of us, and, I'm definitely guilty of this too, we second-guess ourselves, or we feel pulled in different directions by what other people expect of us. How does this understanding of Swadharma help with that?
Well, that feeling of uncertainty, that self-doubt, often comes when we're trying to force ourselves to do things that don't really resonate with who we are, Like, if we're pressured to take on roles or pursue goals that just don't feel authentic to us.
I've definitely been there.
It's like trying to write with your non-dominant hand. It's awkward and it creates resistance.
Yeah.
But when you really understand your svabhava, your strengths, your talents, what truly energizes you, you can start to find a path that feels right. And that alignment, that's what reduces that self-doubt.
I see. So when you're acting from a place of genuine alignment, it kind of just flows. You know what you're doing. Okay, so another big concept in the Gita is karma yoga, which I know can be a bit tricky. It's this idea of acting without being attached to the results.
Right.
How does that work with all the anxiety we face about, I don't know, achieving things, being successful?
Yeah, Karma Yoga, as Swami Nikhilananda describes it on pages 106 and 107, it's like this discipline where you perform your duties, but you let go of the need to control the outcome.
Okay.
You shift your focus from worrying about success or failure to just being present in the action itself.
So it's like immersing yourself in the task rather than
Oh, yeah.
constantly worrying about what might happen as a result.
Exactly. And by putting your energy and attention into the process, the immediate moment, you naturally lessen the anxiety about what might or might not happen in the future.
It's a way to kind of like tame that anxiety, to not let it take over.
That's it. And, the Gita even points out on page 106 that we can't escape action altogether. I mean, even just keeping our bodies functioning requires action. So action is a part of life, but it's the way we approach it that makes all the difference.
But how do you balance that with like the drive to achieve, to
Yeah.
succeed, which is, kind of ingrained in us?
I hear you. It's not about not caring or not striving to do your best. The detachment is about letting go of that rigid attachment to a specific outcome. Like, Gita talks about someone who might be physically restraining themselves, but their mind is still racing with desires and attachments.
Wow.
That's self-deception, it says. True strength comes from controlling the senses with the mind, without that clinging.
Okay.
Think of it like a musician.
Oh, yeah.
They practice and perform with passion, but they can't control how every single person in the audience is going to react,
Right, right.
Their focus is on the music, on the art of creation itself.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a really good way to put it. And I remember reading something on page 140 about performing actions as a sacrifice, like without selfish motives.
Right.
How does it fit into all this?
Well, when our actions are mainly driven by what we want, what we expect to get out of them, it sets us up for anxiety.
Right, because we're so focused on the outcome.
Exactly. We
Right.
become so invested in specific results that when things don't go as planned, it leads to disappointment and worry,
Yeah, yeah.
But if we act with a sense of selfless service, focusing on how we can contribute rather than just what we can gain, it kind of purifies our mind. It frees us from that tight grip of attachment.
So it's like shifting from what's in it for me to how can I be of service?
Exactly.
That's a big shift.
It is, but it's incredibly freeing.
Okay, so let's talk about fear. The Gita talks about this idea of steadiness of mind. What does that even look like in practice?
Right, steadiness of mind. On page 92, the Gita describes a person with steady wisdom, someone deeply absorbed in what's called samadhi, this divine consciousness.
Okay.
And a key characteristic is that their mind is firm and steady, not easily distracted by doubts or conflicting opinions.
That sounds so difficult. Like, how do you even get to that point?
Well, it's definitely a practice. But
Yeah.
the point is that this person, rooted in their true self, they're not shaken by the dualities of life, the ups and downs, pleasure and pain, success and failure. Verse 147 on page 72 talks about this, how this inner equilibrium helps to overcome fear. Because a lot of our fear, it comes from resisting pain, clinging to pleasure, not wanting to accept the way things naturally ebb and flow.
I see. It's like fighting against reality in a way.
Yeah, and that creates so much tension. So how do we cultivate this steadiness of mind? Well, the Gita offers the practice of yoga.
Okay.
And it's not just about the physical postures, although those can help. It's really about discipline, learning to control your mind, focusing it on something higher. This is on page 166.
This is a more holistic approach.
Yes, exactly. It's about bringing balance to your life. Even simple things like moderation in eating and sleeping, the Gita says, can contribute to mental and emotional stability.
So it's like all these things are connected, right?
Yeah.
Taking care of your physical body, that supports mental clarity, which then strengthens you emotionally.
Absolutely. It's all interwoven. And the Gita emphasizes that when your mind, which is so often pulled in different directions, when it finally finds that unwavering steadiness in the self, that's when you achieve true yoga.
Wow, that's powerful. So you're not just calming the mind, you're kind of like anchoring it to something deeper.
Exactly. And that's what helps you overcome fear, because you have this inner foundation.
Okay, so lastly, the Gita talks about overcoming our limitations through renunciation and action. I know that sounds kind of contradictory.
It does, doesn't it? But on page 147, the Gita actually says that the path of knowledge and the path of action, even though they seem different, they both lead to the same goal, which is liberation.
Interesting.
The key is not to abandon action altogether, but to renounce the fruits of action.
So it's not what we do, but why we do it, and what we expect to get out of it.
You got it. Performing actions without being attached to the outcome, without needing a certain result, that's what purifies the mind. That's what brings us closer to that ultimate reality, Brahman.
It's like trusting the process, even if the results aren't what you hoped for.
Yes, exactly. Trusting that there's still value in the effort, in the learning. And, the Gita even goes so far as to say that those who are devoted to yoga, pure in heart, who have mastered their senses and see the self in all beings, they're not tainted by their actions.
That's deep.
It's profound. It's about shifting your perspective, seeing yourself as part of something bigger, recognizing the interconnectedness of everything. And that can really help to diminish feelings of guilt, anxiety, and fear.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Bhagavad Gita, I want to ask you, the listener, what are some key takeaways for you?
We've covered a lot, haven't we? We talked about how understanding the eternal nature of yourself, your Atman, can help you deal with grief and anxiety.
Yeah.
We discussed how aligning your actions with your own dharma, your inherent nature, can reduce self-doubt.
We explored karma yoga, which is about acting with dedication but without clinging to specific results.
Right.
And we talked about how cultivating steadiness of mind through yoga, through finding that inner anchor, can make you more resilient in the face of fear and uncertainty.
And finally, that idea of renouncing the fruits of your actions, how that can lead to greater peace and freedom.
Yes, it's a powerful concept.
And what's so incredible about all of this is that these aren't just ancient ideas. They're so relevant to our lives today. I mean, think about how many people struggle with self-doubt, anxiety, and fear. These teachings offer real, practical guidance for navigating those challenges.
Absolutely. So to our listener, I want to leave you with this question. Which of these teachings from the Bhagavad Gita really speaks to you, to the specific things you're facing in your life right now? How might even just one of these principles help you to shift your perspective, to find more peace and resilience?
That's a great question. I encourage you to really reflect on that and maybe even revisit your own sources of wisdom with these ancient insights in mind. Yeah, it's a journey.
It is. It is. And thanks for joining us on this part of it.
It's always a pleasure.
Until next time.